I never thought a pair of hedge clippers and a beer on the porch would lead to the life I live now. But I guess most men don't see the end coming until it's already rolled over them. It started like any other Saturday. The sun was already baking the roof shingles by 9 a.m., and I was outside, staring up at the mess of branches hanging like spider legs over our backyard. My wife, Ellie, had been after me for weeks to do something about them. I'd trimmed a branch or two in my day, sure, but the way those limbs hung there, twisted and thick, it wasn't a job for a guy with a step ladder and no health insurance. So I called up my buddy, Dean. Dean's one of those guys who always has sawdust in his hair and a sunburn line across his neck. He's a professional tree trimmer, runs a little operation with a couple guys and a rented truck. We went to school together, though Dean took the rougher path and I guess I took the slower one. While I was getting fired from call centers and small-town retail jobs, he was 20 feet up in the air, swinging chainsaws like they were extensions of his arm. He showed up around noon with a pair of sunglasses, that lazy grin, and a thermos of iced coffee that smelled suspiciously like it had whiskey in it. "Long time no see," he said, stepping out of the truck. "Nice branches. Shame about the guy who owns them." "Funny," I said. "You gonna insult me before or after I pay you?" We laughed. That's the thing about Dean. He's got a way of talking to you that feels like a punch and a pat on the back all at once. You want to tell him to go to hell, but you also want to grab a drink with him right after. He got to work quickly, and I played assistant. Handed him ropes, kept the dog from barking its head off, and made sure Ellie didn't step out barefoot while he was tossing limbs from the trees like they were firewood. It was hot, and she was in a mood, so she mostly stayed inside. By the time Dean was done, the sun was low and the yard looked clean. The trees stood taller, lighter, like someone had given them a good haircut. "That'll be a six-pack and a steak dinner," Dean said, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his glove. "Deal," I said. "Let me grab Ellie. Maybe we'll go somewhere decent." Now here's the part that starts everything. Ellie came down the stairs wearing this little black dress I hadn't seen in years, stockings, even, and dark red lipstick that turned her usual soft face into something more striking. I blinked. "Going somewhere?" I asked, half joking. "You said dinner," she smiled, putting on earrings. "Figured we'd go all out." Dean let out a low whistle. Now that's a woman who knows how to say thank you. She smiled at him too, in that way women do when they want to feel noticed. I didn't think much of it at the time. Or maybe I did. Maybe it just slipped through the cracks of my attention, the way 1,000 little things had over the years. Dinner was at the Willows, a place with soft lighting and overpriced cocktails. Dean made us laugh all evening. Ellie was glowing, and I guess I was just happy to be out. We had a few drinks. Then a few more. By the time we got home, Dean was leaning on my shoulder and Ellie was humming some old blues song. I poured us one last drink, and that was that. Or so I thought. The next morning, Dean called me up. "Hey," he said. "Had fun last night. Tell you what, next weekend, let's play some poker. Just you and me. I know you're a gambler. Still remember high school, man." I chuckled. "You sure you want to see how lucky I am?" "Oh, I'm sure," he said. I had no idea what kind of game we were really getting into. The week passed in a blur. I went to work, came home, argued with Ellie over nonsense like we always did, laundry baskets left in the hallway, the weird smell from the fridge, the way I sometimes forgot to rinse my coffee cup. Same routine. Only this time, there was a faint buzz in the back of my head. A kind of anticipation. Poker night. See, I've always had a weakness for games. Not just poker, anything that got my blood racing. Dice. Blackjack. Sports bets. I once bet a guy my pickup that I could throw a football across the river down on 4th Street. Spoiler, I couldn't. That truck ended up his by nightfall. So yeah, I've been known to push my luck. Dean knew that. Saturday night came, and Ellie was curled up in her robe, flipping through channels with one hand and holding a glass of wine with the other. "You going to wear that old thing?" she asked as I was digging through the closet for my lucky hoodie, the one with the faded racetrack logo on it. I raised an eyebrow. "It's poker with Dean. I'm not walking into a casino." She shrugged. "Just thought maybe you'd want to look like you came to win." That stuck with me. I didn't say anything, but I noticed she had done her hair. Not like done, but brushed and curled at the ends, like she wasn't just staying in for a night alone. "You staying in?" I asked, pretending it was casual. She smiled. "Where would I go?" I didn't have an answer, so I nodded and left. Dean's house was a couple blocks over. One of those ranch-style homes with too many projects and not enough storage. He had a couple beers chilling in a cooler by the door, and the garage was all set up with a card table, folding chairs, and some blues music playing soft in the background. "Ready to lose your mortgage," he joked as he shuffled the cards. "Only if you're ready to lose that busted truck of yours," I shot back. It started innocent. $20 here. 50 there. The stakes crept up the way they always do, sneaky, like water on a stovetop just before the boil. He won the first couple hands. I took the third. We laughed, cursed, talked about old times. He mentioned his wife, Jules, said she was out with friends. He asked how Ellie was, and I just shrugged. "Same as always," I said. "Beautiful, complicated, hard to please." He nodded. "Ain't that the truth?" By midnight, I was down a few hundred, and the whiskey had made everything feel like it had a soft glow around the edges. I knew I should stop, but I wanted to win it back. That's the trap every gambler falls into. You think just one more hand will turn everything around. Dean leaned back in his chair, rubbed his chin, and said, "How about we raise the stakes?" I looked up. "Higher than the 300 I owe you now?" He grinned. "Way higher." I narrowed my eyes. "What are we talking here?" He sipped his drink. "One hand. Winner takes it all. But this time, the bet ain't money." I sat still, feeling the air shift. "Okay," I said slowly. "Then what?" He glanced sideways, almost shy, but the grin stayed on his lips. "You win, I walk out right now and never mention this again. You lose," he trailed off. "You give me a night with Ellie." I stared at him. "Man, you serious?" He nodded. "Dead serious." I looked down at my cards, then back at him. I should have walked away. I should have said no. But part of me wanted to prove something, not just to Dean, but to myself. I wanted to win. And I wanted to win big. "All right," I said, voice quiet. "You got a deal." The silence that followed my agreement was heavier than the air in that old garage. Dean didn't grin. He didn't even blink. He just nodded, like we'd made a business transaction. As if what we were betting wasn't sacred. "One hand," he said. "No folding. You ready?" I wanted to say something clever, maybe act like I was in control, but the truth was, my heart was pounding like I'd just run laps. I nodded and sat up straight. Dean shuffled slow, deliberate, like he'd been practicing this moment. I watched every move, looking for something off, but his hands were steady. He burned a card, dealt 2 to each of us, then laid 3 down in the center. I glanced at my hand. King of hearts and 9 of hearts. The flop showed the ace of hearts, 7 of clubs, and 10 of hearts. Inside, I flinched. "You good?" Dean asked, leaning back in his chair. "Peachy," I muttered, trying not to show anything. I had a flush draw. One more heart and I was golden. Or I was screwed. He dealt the turn card, Queen of Diamonds. My mouth went dry. All I needed now was a heart and I'd have it. Just one card. He flipped the river. 4 of hearts. I looked at Dean. He looked at me. "Show, M," he said. I laid my cards down. Flush. Dean blinked once. Then he laid down the Jack and King of spades, giving him a straight from 10 to ace. Silence again. He didn't cheer. Didn't smile. Just said, "Well, damn." I stared at the cards for a long time, hoping the numbers would change. They didn't. "You serious about this?" I asked, my voice hoarse. He nodded. "You agreed." "I ain't gonna force nothing. But a bet's a bet." I stood up, pushing my chair back. "I need some air." He didn't follow me. I walked home in the dark, hands stuffed in my pockets, heart pounding like a war drum. I kept hearing that damn river card flipping in my head. Over and over. The 4 of hearts. Betrayer. Ellie was still awake when I got home. She was sitting at the kitchen table in her robe, sipping tea like she'd been waiting. "Well?" she asked. I froze. "You knew?" She nodded slowly. "Dean texted me after you left. Told me the stakes." I stared at her. "And you didn't shut it down?" "I was curious," she said simply. That word hit harder than any slap. Curious. "You're my wife, Ellie." She stood, walked toward me, that same calm face she wore when asking me to unclog the sink or buy more detergent. No guilt. No shame. Just curiosity. "You made the bet," she said. "You always want to gamble, to feel alive." Maybe I wanted to feel that way too. I slumped into a chair, the world spinning. "I didn't think you'd actually be okay with it." "I didn't think you'd actually go through with it," she said, pouring herself another cup of tea. "But here we are." We sat in silence for a long time. Then, softly, she said, "If it's going to happen, I'd rather it happen with you here. Together. Honest. You want me to watch?" "No," she said. "I want you to be there. Maybe we all just stop pretending to be something we're not." I didn't answer. I couldn't. But I didn't walk out either. The next morning was quiet, too quiet, like the air in the house was holding its breath. Ellie made eggs and toast. Nothing fancy. She didn't speak much. Just moved around the kitchen in that same slow, graceful way she always had. Except now, every step she took felt charged. Like we were living inside a wire about to snap. I kept waiting for her to say she'd been kidding. That it was all some sick joke to punish me for betting something I had no right to. But she never said anything like that. Instead, she said, "Dean wants to come over tonight." I looked up from my coffee. "Tonight?" She nodded. "He wants to talk. All of us. Talk." "Right. Ellie," I said, my voice cracking a little, "you know this is messed up, right?" She didn't answer right away. Just stood there, looking out the window at the backyard where Dean had trimmed the trees not even a week ago. "Maybe," she said. "But maybe what's more messed up is how we've been living like we're strangers. Maybe we both just wanted something to break the silence." I didn't have an answer to that. So I just sipped my coffee and nodded like a man who had already lost. Dean showed up around 7 p.m., clean shirt, hair slicked back, bottle of red wine in his hand like he was heading to a dinner party. He smiled like he always did, easy, confident, sure of himself. "Hey, man," he said as I opened the door. "Still good?" I stepped aside and let him in. Didn't say a word. Ellie greeted him with a hug. A hug. Not one of those awkward sidearm things, this was a full, lingering embrace. Her cheek brushed his jaw, and I saw her whisper something I couldn't hear. They sat on the couch together while I poured wine, pretending like I was hosting, like we were civilized people about to discuss something rational. Dean spoke first. "I meant what I said, you know. I didn't think you'd actually go through with it. But I respect it." I didn't look at him. "You respect it?" "Yeah. You could have backed out. Thrown the hand, made some excuse. But you didn't. That takes guts." I laughed bitterly. "Or stupidity." Ellie leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. "Can we stop circling it and just say what we're all thinking?" Silence. "I want to try it," she said. The words hung in the room like smoke. "I want to see what it's like, with him. But I don't want secrets. I don't want to lie. That's why I'm saying it now. With you here." I stared at her. And then I surprised myself. "Fine." She blinked. "What?" I cleared my throat. "If it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen on my terms. This house. One night. After that, we talk about what it means." Dean gave a slow nod. "Fair enough." Ellie bit her lip and looked down, but I swear I saw something in her eyes, relief. Or maybe excitement. Or maybe both. That night was something I can't explain, not in plain language. It wasn't about sex, not really. It was about watching something break, something you thought would always hold. We didn't go to separate rooms. Ellie wanted me to be part of it. She wanted us to stop pretending we were just husband and wife and friend. She wanted the three of us to be honest. And I let it happen. I watched. I listened. I hated it. And then, I didn't. Something shifted. Not in a way I expected. I didn't feel like a cuckold, or a loser, or whatever word guys use when they want to pretend they're strong. I felt like a man at the edge of a cliff, and instead of falling, I floated. We didn't talk much afterward. Just lay there, the three of us, silent and tangled, like kids trying to make sense of a dream they all shared. That night didn't destroy us. It made something new. Something strange. Something I hadn't yet named. Waking up the next morning, I expected the air to be thick with guilt, or at the very least, awkwardness. But it wasn't. The sun crept through the blinds like any other day. The house smelled like Ellie's vanilla shampoo and faint sweat. And there we were, Dean on the left, Ellie in the middle, me on the right. She stirred first, stretching like a cat, not covering herself, not rushing to put distance between any of us. She turned her head toward me and smiled softly. "Morning," she said. I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. My thoughts were too crowded. What we'd done the night before wasn't a mistake, not in the way I'd imagined it would be. It hadn't broken us. If anything, it had cracked something open, and now the light was pouring in. Dean got up, pulling on his jeans with a quiet grunt. "I'll make coffee." Ellie turned toward me, brushing hair from my face. "You okay?" I nodded. Not because I was okay, but because I wanted to figure out what it meant to be okay in this new world we'd wandered into. "Was that what you wanted?" I asked her, my voice rough with sleep. She tilted her head. "It's not about what I wanted. It's about being real for the first time in a long time." I didn't know what that meant, not fully, but I didn't push. Over breakfast, it was strange how normal things felt. Dean sat at the table shirtless, sipping coffee, and Ellie made scrambled eggs like it was just another Sunday morning. No tension. No weirdness. Just three people pretending they hadn't crossed a line that most married couples would never even look at. But deep down, I knew we couldn't keep pretending it was a one-time thing. "So," Dean said, between bites, "do we talk about it or just pretend it never happened?" Ellie looked to me. "I think we have to talk about it," I said. "Because pretending is what got us into this mess in the first place." Dean nodded. "All right. You go first." I sighed. I didn't hate it. I thought I would. I thought I'd feel like less of a man or like I'd lost something. But I didn't. I felt. I don't know, included. In control. A part of it. Ellie smiled, proud and sad at the same time. Dean looked thoughtful. "You always were more honest than you let on." I leaned forward, elbows on the table. "But this can't just be a thing we do without thinking it through. There's got to be rules." Ellie nodded. "Agreed." "Rule 1, I said. No secrets. If anyone's feeling left out, or upset, or even just weird about it, we talk." Dean raised his cup in agreement. "Rule 2, Ellie added, this stays between us. No one else gets invited in. Not physically, not emotionally. Just us three." That one surprised me, but I agreed. I didn't want to open our home up to strangers. "Rule 3, Dean said, if either of you ever wants to stop, completely, then it stops. No questions asked." We all nodded. It was weird, this pact we were forming. Stranger still was how natural it felt. The next few weeks were different. Life took on a rhythm none of us expected. Dean started coming over more. Not just for nights, but for dinners, lazy Sunday football, helping me fix the old shed out back. He didn't feel like a guest anymore. He felt like part of our life. Sometimes Ellie would lean her head on his shoulder when we watched a movie. Sometimes she curled into me while Dean grilled steaks outside. The intimacy wasn't just sexual, it was emotional, layered, confusing, and strangely satisfying. One night, as Ellie lay between us again, she whispered, "Do you hate me for this?" I shook my head. "I don't hate you. I just don't know who we are anymore." "Maybe," she said, "we're finally who we were always supposed to be." And maybe she was right. By now, people in the neighborhood had started to notice. Dean's truck was parked in front of our house almost every other night. Ellie had a different glow about her, a kind of lightness that made the mailman linger too long at the porch. And me? I walked with my head down more often, unsure whether to be proud, ashamed, or something in between. It was working. Whatever this was, whatever weird shape we had sculpted out of our crumbling marriage and old friendship, it worked. We weren't fighting anymore. Ellie laughed more. I slept better. Dean talked about building a fence in our backyard, like it was his own. Then came the envelope. It was a plain white one. No return address. Just our house number scribbled in ink. I found it in the mailbox on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Inside, one photo. Dean and Ellie. At the hardware store. Standing close. Too close. Her hand was on his chest. His lips were near her ear. They were smiling. And behind the photo, a small note. You're being played. Thought you should know. A friend. I just stood there on the porch, the rain soaking my shoes, staring at the grainy image. It wasn't proof of anything I didn't already know, or at least suspect, but it hit differently seeing it through someone else's lens. I had agreed to this. I had let it happen. But now, with that photo in my hand, I felt something unfamiliar creeping back in. Doubt. That night, I didn't say anything. Just sat through dinner like I was made of cardboard. Ellie seemed normal, cheerful even. Dean grilled ribs out back while she washed strawberries and laughed at something on her phone. I wanted to believe the note was just some bitter neighbor, or a jealous ex, someone who didn't understand what we had. But then I saw them from the kitchen window. Dean reached out and touched her hip. Not the playful kind of touch. Not the kind we'd all agreed on. This was different. Private. And the way she looked up at him? That wasn't part of our rules. I confronted Dean the next morning. We met at the local diner, same place we always went for breakfast after poker nights. I slid the photo across the table. He barely glanced at it. Where'd you get that? Mailbox. He sighed and leaned back. You think I'm sneaking around with her? I don't know what to think. She's your wife, man. You were the one who made the bet. You were the one who said yes to all of this. That was supposed to be us. Not just you and her. He looked at me, serious now. It's not just me and her. You're still part of this. Then why do I feel like the third wheel? Dean didn't answer right away. He took a long sip of coffee, his eyes never leaving mine. Because maybe you are. That hit like a punch to the ribs. When I got home, Ellie was in the backyard, watering the rose bushes. I handed her the photo. She looked at it, then up at me. No shock. No shame. Just calm. You think I've been lying to you? I know something changed, I said. She set the hose down. I love you. But this was never just about one night. Dean makes me feel seen. And I think you wanted that too, even if you didn't realize it. I shook my head. This wasn't supposed to be a replacement. Ellie stepped closer. Then don't let it be. But if we keep going, it has to be honest. All the way honest. I felt like the ground under me was shifting. My marriage had turned into a triangle, and one side was starting to stretch too far. I needed space. I'm going to stay at my brother's place for a few days, I said. She nodded. No begging. No anger. Okay. And that was the scariest part. How easy it was for her to let me go. My brother Nate lived about 20 minutes outside town, in a trailer parked on a patch of land he never mowed. He didn't ask many questions when I showed up with a duffel bag and a tired face. Long story, he asked. I nodded. Beers in the fridge. Showers iffy. Don't flush the toilet twice. That was his way of saying stay as long as you need. I spent the next few days in a fog. I worked my shifts, kept my phone on silent, and ignored every message from Ellie. Not that there were many. A few texts. One missed call. Then silence. That was worse than anything. On the fourth day, Nate walked in while I was sitting on his porch, nursing a warm beer. You gonna tell me what happened? He asked. I looked at him and hesitated. Nate and I weren't the heart-to-heart type. But I had to let it out somewhere. I made a stupid bet, I said finally. Oh yeah? Poker night. I bet my wife. He raised an eyebrow. Say that again? Dean, my friend, the tree trimmer, you've met him. He made a bet. Said if I lost, he'd get a night with Ellie. Nate blinked. Jesus. I lost. He didn't say anything for a while. Just lit a cigarette and stared out into the woods. And she went along with it? She didn't hesitate. More silence. Damn, man, he said, shaking his head. That's a whole new kind of wreck. The next night, I caved and checked my phone. One new message. From Dean. Come home. We need to talk. You deserve the truth. I didn't know what truth he meant. I thought I already knew it all. But something in me needed to see for myself. I drove back the next morning. The house looked the same, our old siding, the hydrangeas Ellie planted last spring, Dean's truck still in the driveway. She opened the door before I even knocked. I wasn't sure if you'd come, she said. Where's Dean? She stepped aside and let me in. He was sitting at the kitchen table, wearing a worn t-shirt, his eyes bloodshot like he hadn't slept in days. I lied, he said. I folded my arms. About what? He looked down, then up at me. That photo. The one in the mailbox? I sent it. The air went still. What? I took it. Sent it. Wrote the note. I wanted to push you. Test you. See how far you'd go. My chest tightened. Why? Dean didn't flinch. Because I was starting to feel like I was the outsider. Like you and Ellie were letting me in, but not all the way. I wanted to see if you'd fight for her. Or leave. Ellie looked at him, stunned. You did what? He looked ashamed, but not sorry. I thought if he left, we could figure something out. Just us. I didn't expect him to come back. I backed up a step. So all this time, this wasn't about honesty or rules or exploring something new. This was about you wanting her for yourself. Dean stood. At first? Maybe. But then it got complicated. Ellie's voice trembled. You used us. No, he said. I wanted us. But I guess I wanted her more. I stared at both of them, my best friend and my wife, and realized something. There was no going back to the way things were. That night, I slept on the couch. I needed space, even in my own home. In the middle of the night, I heard Ellie crying in the bedroom. Not loud. Not for attention. Just soft, muffled sobs like someone trying to hide from their own guilt. And I knew then. The triangle was breaking apart. One side had already snapped. And the rest? It was about to fall. The next morning was gray, the sky heavy with clouds that looked like they didn't want to make a decision, just like the three of us. Ellie was already in the kitchen, making coffee in silence. Dean was gone. His truck, his smell, his presence, gone without a trace. Did he say where he was going? I asked. She shook her head. Just said he wouldn't come back. And just like that, the strange three-legged table we'd been balancing our marriage on finally tipped over. What was left was me and her, and a house that suddenly felt too big. We sat at the table for a long while, sipping black coffee like two people mourning something that had been doomed from the start. You mad at me? She finally asked. I don't know, I answered honestly. I never thought it'd go that far. With him. But, when it started, I felt alive again. Not because he was better. But because I stopped trying to be perfect. I nodded slowly. He knew exactly when to twist the knife. She reached across the table and took my hand, gently. Do you hate me? I looked at her, really looked. Her eyes were still the same. Maybe softer now. Maybe tired. I don't hate you, I said. But I don't think I know who we are anymore. She didn't let go. Then let's start over. With no games. No bets. Just us. That afternoon, I went to the garage and found the old poker set in its metal case. I opened it, looked at the chips, remembered that night, the one that changed everything. And I threw it in the trash. It felt symbolic. Necessary. Ellie watched from the porch, arms crossed but not angry. Just observing. Like she was trying to learn who I was again. We didn't talk about Dean after that. Not that day. Not the next. He became a shadow, an echo of a choice we both made. Then something strange happened. A few days later, I got a text from an unknown number. I never meant to ruin your life. Just wanted to see if I could fit into it. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't respond. I didn't delete it either. Instead, I slid my phone into my pocket and walked back inside. Ellie was in the kitchen, barefoot, dancing to a song I couldn't hear. She looked up at me and smiled. It wasn't the same smile from before, not the playful, careless one. This one had weight. Memory. Regret. And something else. Maybe hope. That night, she climbed into bed beside me, just the two of us for the first time in what felt like forever. No Dean. No rules. No confusion. Just skin, warmth, and a quiet understanding that if we were going to survive this, it had to be earned. Not gambled. As we lay there in the dark, she whispered, "I never stopped being yours." I didn't answer. But I squeezed her hand. And for now, that was enough. Things quieted down after that. Ellie and I fell into a new rhythm, simple, cautious, but strangely comforting. We cooked together again. Went on slow walks in the evening. We even laughed now and then, like we were rediscovering forgotten pieces of ourselves. But something lingered beneath the surface. Not guilt exactly. Not anger either. Just, something unfinished. I hadn't seen Dean since the day he disappeared from our house. No texts after the last one. No calls. I didn't ask around. Part of me thought he'd come back and ruin everything all over again. But weeks passed. Then months. The silence settled like dust. It was early spring when the letter came. Not a text. Not an email. A real letter. Thick envelope. My name scrawled in blue ink. I opened it on the porch. Inside was a single page. Handwritten. "You always loved the game more than you admitted. That's why I let you win the last hand. You thought you lost your wife to a bet, but what if the truth is worse? What if you never had her to begin with? Check the attic. D." I stood there frozen, the letter trembling in my fingers. I had no idea what it meant. But my legs carried me to the attic ladder without hesitation. The attic smelled of insulation and old Christmas boxes. Dust coated every box. Every beam. I hadn't been up here in years. I started pulling boxes apart, unsure what I was even looking for. Then I found it. A shoebox. Inside, photos. Old ones. Dean. Ellie. Together. Some were casual, group barbecues, camping trips, but others were intimate. One in particular stopped my breath. Ellie. In our bedroom. But the photo was old, judging by her hair, it had to be at least a year before the bet. Maybe more. She was lying on our bed. And Dean was beside her. I sat down hard on the wooden floor. They hadn't started with the bet. They'd been together before it. The whole thing, the poker night, the offer, the slow burn into a shared arrangement, it hadn't been some strange accident of lust or chance. It was a setup. The game wasn't poker. It was me. I didn't tell her what I found. Not at first. I wanted to believe there was still something worth saving. But that night, I watched her as she brushed her hair in the mirror. Something about her expression told me she knew I knew. "I got a letter from Dean," I said. She froze, her hand stilled mid-stroke. "Oh?" He said to check the attic. She didn't turn around. "You found the photos?" "Yes." She lowered the brush. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said quietly. I let out a bitter laugh. "That ship sailed a long time ago." She finally turned to face me. "We were together once. Before. I was confused. You were distant. He was around. And the bet?" Her eyes didn't flinch. "He thought it would be a way to bring you into it. To make it less secret. He said you might even enjoy it." I stared at her like I was seeing a stranger. I did. Until I realized I was never a player. I was the prize. She said nothing. I left the next morning. Didn't slam the door. Didn't pack much. Just got in the truck and drove. I didn't go to Nate's. Didn't go to work. I just drove until the road ran out. Pulled over near a lake, turned off the engine, and just sat there. My phone buzzed once. A message. From Dean. So. What's your next move? I didn't reply. Instead, I pulled out the poker case from under the passenger seat. I hadn't really thrown it away. I just said I did. I opened it slowly. Inside, tucked beneath the red chips, was something I forgot about. A card. One single playing card. The Joker. That's when I smiled. Because in every deck, there's always a card no one counts on. And maybe, just maybe, my hand wasn't played out after all. Maybe I'd been folding too soon. Maybe it was time I dealt the next game. But this time, on my terms. No bets. No rules. Just truth. And maybe revenge.